Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to this video, guys. Okay, right, sound should be working now. Okay, so hope everyone's okay. The lesson's not gonna be very long anyway. Right, it's only gonna be about half an hour or so. So we're gonna basically do some reflections on Surah Ar-Rum. So I hope you guys have had chance to do some reflections. We're going to be going through Surah Ar-Rum, or we're going to go through some reflections. Now, I can't exactly remember everything I covered last time. So might be a lot of overlap in what we discuss. But anyway, there's going to be some goodness in there, inshallah. Okay, so Surah Ar-Rum. So you can post anything you like about Surah Ar-Rum, any sort of points you remember from before, so I've chosen this mushaf. Okay, I don't know what kind of mushaf you guys like using, but this one's a nice one. Okay, so let's have a check then. Alright, so let's start with this then. So A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So like I said, you can post any sort of reflections that you guys have. You can post it in the comments, inshallah. And if you use an Arabic one, you can use Arabic. If you use English or any other language translation, I don't mind, as long as you kind of get the idea of what we are sort of discussing here. So anyway, right. So A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So this is Surah Ar-Rum reflections, continuing from where we left off the discussions before. And like I said, we most likely are going to be repeating a lot of things here. We're going to be going over some of the things that we did before, and some new things maybe we'll discuss. So let's look at some points in this surah. So for example, like Alif Lam Mim Ghulibat Ar-Rum. Rum has been dominated, and we know Rum was talking about Byzantine. Right? In them days, Byzantine was what they called Eastern Europe. So this was Byzantine. So Allah is saying Ghulibat Ar-Rum. Rum has been dominated. Rum has been overpowered. Fi adna al-ard, in the closest earth. Fi adna al-ard, in the earth which is closest, in the land which is closest. In other words, closest to the Arabs. So the part of the Roman Empire that's closest to the Arabs, that's where they've been dominated. وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ, and they are going to be after their ghalab, meaning after their ghalaba, after their overpowering. In other words, after they were overpowered, they will overpower. Meaning that very, very soon they will regain control once again. So بَعْدَ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. Notice in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the beginning, He says غُلِبَتْ Ar-Rum, and He used the majhul, doesn't use the ma'lum, right? So it doesn't say غَلَبَتْ al-Furs Ar-Rum, right? He says غُلِبَتْ Ar-Rum. Rum has been overpowered. Okay, غُلِبَتْ Ar-Rum. And then He says سَيَغْلِبُونَ. And the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned about Rome, about Europe, that Europe have this tendency to recover after calamities. Yeah, asra'uhum karran. Yeah, so they are the fastest people to recover. So this is an attribute that the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned about Rome, and maybe this is where the Prophet ﷺ got the inspiration from for this. Fi bid'i sinin, in a few years, right? So here this is mentioning about years as well. So in the surah, maybe in the surah there's going to be some reflection that we can do on years, on time as well, right? So this idea of time, politics, wars, defeat and victory, all of these things are things that we're going to get. Lillahi al-amru min qablu wa min ba'd. But ultimately, we always have to remember that for Allah and Allah alone belongs al-amr. In other words, the control of affairs is always going to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lillahi al-amr min qablu wa min ba'du wa yawma idhin yafrahul mu'minun. And on that day, on such a day, yawma idhin, that day, the believers will be happy, rejoicing. So in other words, this seems to be indicating towards a very important point, which is that as Muslims, it doesn't matter what happens politically around the world, it doesn't matter what happens, whether, countries that we have no connection to, whether they are victorious, or they win the elections, or they are defeated, we always have to remember that Allah is always in control. And maybe this is something which a person can think about when it comes to, let's say, coronavirus as well. I mean, it seems as though the world has been غُلِبَت الأرض. غُلِبَت الأرض. The whole earth has become defeated by coronavirus. You can look at it like that, but you have to look at لِلَّهِ الْأَمْرُ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَمِنْ بَعْدُ. Allah is in control. Allah has been in control from before coronavirus hit, and Allah is always in control after coronavirus hits. Yeah, so maybe you can look at it that way as well. يَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Believers will be happy when Rome defeats. So in other words, Rome defeating the enemy, there seems to be this idea that believers naturally will become happy at an enemy's success. Right? So like they say, your enemy's enemy is your friend. So your enemy's enemy being your friend, this might be, someone might say, well, look, the Quran indicates towards this as well. يَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Why would believers be happy if Rome defeats their enemy? Rome defeats Persia, let's say. Why should the Muslims be happy for? Like, the Muslims didn't get victory. So again, here there's an indication towards Muslims are allowed to be happy at the victory of their enemies over someone else. Right? So يَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Believers will be exhilarated, will be in jubilee, will be happy, will be joyous. يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ بِنَصْرِ اللَّهِ, with the help of Allah. So in other words, help of Allah with the non-Muslims. Can the help of Allah come with the non-Muslims? So it seems as though that's the case. بِنَصْرِ اللَّهِ, with the help of Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, this is also indication towards the idea of Allah's help coming to anyone on earth. So on this earth that we're living, everything's happening on this earth. Leaders are being given their position. Some leaders are being demoted, are being removed from their positions. Some people are being given wealth. Some people's wealth have been taken. All these things that are happening on earth, Allah is behind the scenes. Allah is the one that's doing everything. Right? He's making the means happen. He's making that child grow. He's making that child grow into an old person. He's making the ill person become healthy, the healthy person become ill. So every single thing that happens in the world, Muslims have to believe Allah is always in control. Likewise, غُلِبَتِ Ar-Rum. There must have been a reason why Rome became defeated. There must have been like a sequence of events that took place. Why? So, like I said, guys, you guys can also put in the comments as well. MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, wa alaikum assalam, everyone. Idris Shah Sab, Jazakumullah khair, MashaAllah. Idris Shah is always very nice and kind. So, you guys can put in the comments as well your reflections on this surah. So I'm not going to be answering fiqh questions in these lessons. All I'm going to be focusing on Surah Ar-Rum. So if you have anything to say about Surah Ar-Rum, any sort of points that you can maybe highlight, or maybe something which you can share with us, maybe something that comes to your mind even, you haven't read it anywhere but it comes to your mind, might be correct, might be incorrect, right? But the point is reflections. We want reflections in this series. So Nasrillah, the help of Allah. And so the question comes, does Allah help the Europeans? Yes, why not? Yansuru man yasha. Allah, He supports and gives nasr to whoever He wills. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الرَّحِيمُ. And at the end of the day, Allah is the Almighty, the one that can give power to anyone, that can overpower anyone. And He's the Rahim, He's the most merciful. So He even shows non-Muslims mercy as well. Right? So it's like this surah now. Okay, now if I was to say to you, okay, what do you think this surah is going to contain now? So Rum has been mentioned. So the surah is clearly not about Rome itself. It's not about like an index or a contents of Rome, of what Rome is about and what Europe's about. No, but it must have the idea of this like victory and defeat. This idea of victory and the idea of defeat. So the idea of victory and defeat, these parallels, these sort of like opposites that we have here, is something that we can see, throughout this surah. So this chapter is going to be mentioning this idea of success. Worldly success, worldly failure. Hereafter success, hereafter failure. Life and death. strength and weakness, opposites. You're going to get these opposites throughout this surah. Okay, and this is something that we need to understand. As Muslims living in this world, we're not going to be living a life of total richness. We're not going to be living a life of total health. We're not going to be living a life of total misery and defeat. There are going to be times where we will have success and where we'll have failure. And we have to always remember, it's always in the, Allah is always still in control. Yeah, everything is in the control of Allah. Okay, then he says, وَعْدُ اللَّهِ لَا يُخْلِفُ اللَّهُ وَعْدُهُ. This is a promise from Allah. In other words, Allah promises this. What is it Allah promising? Allah is promising that Rome will defeat their enemies. لا يخلف الله وعده. Allah does not break His promise. ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. Again, this idea of when Allah tells us about something which is a promise of something that will happen in the future, the more we have certainty of this, the more yaqeen, the more belief we have in the promises of Allah, the more we're going to feel content with whatever happens to us. Right? And this is again something that we mentioned in Surah Ankabut as well, if you remember. The opening of Surah Ankabut mentioned about, do the Muslims think that the believers think that they will live without being tested? No, they will be tested. So it's a promise from Allah that you will be tested. Some people will be tested in their lives. Some people will be tested in their health. Right? So there's various forms of tests and tribulations that will be coming into people's lives. Again, this surah is going to be reflecting the promises of Allah. So the more we understand the promises of Allah, the more we're going to understand how we're going to have persistence and forbearance in our lives as well. لكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. Most people don't know. Right? So most people don't know this, as in most people are ignorant of the fact that Allah is in control, that Allah makes promises, and that Allah never breaks His promise. يعلمون ظاهرا من الحياة الدنيا وهم عن الآخرة هم غافلون. That they know the apparentness of the worldly life, and it's something we can see today, like scientists or science even. This is ظاهر الحياة الدنيا. Well, not even scientists, even the average person. What do they see? They see themselves waking up in the morning. That's the ظاهر الحياة الدنيا. And then they expect that they are going to be living every single day in this fashion. They'll be getting up every single morning like this. They are going to have breakfast, and they think every morning I'm going to be having breakfast. And they leave for work, and they think every morning I'm going to go for work. And then they go, and do their work, and they think every day I'm going to be doing the same work. And they return from work, and they think every single day I'm going to return from work. They sit with their families and think every single day I'm going to sit with my family. So it's kind of like a sort of like deception they go through, because they base everything in the worldly life upon the ظاهر من الحياة الدنيا, the apparentness of the worldly life. And the inner part, now, whenever you say ظاهر of the hayat dunya, you're always thinking, what about the inner part of the hayat dunya? The internal part of the hayat dunya. Like the sort of like interior of the hayat dunya. So if this is the exterior of the hayat dunya, most humans base their lives around the exterior experience that they have in their life. But as Muslims, we have to have belief in the interior. So in the interior, it's like, imagine like a car. There's a car, and someone just has a car, they drive their car, and they never ever think about how the car works inside. So many people, they live their lives like that. So they just look at the apparentness of the life, and they don't think about, where did I get my life from? Where does this food come from? How is this food created? How does my body digest this food? How do my cells in my body absorb this food? And how is the food, then the toxins in the food, how are they expelled from my body, and all these kind of things. So if you think about it, most of us live our lives in this fashion. In other words, this seems to be indicating towards, we can call the Roman way of life. The Roman way of life is this. The Roman way of life is that they focus on the outer world. The Roman means the European. The European way of life is the outer world. They will focus on their outer world. They will work hard for their outer world. I'm just thinking aloud here, okay? You guys can, in the comments, what do you guys think? How do you guys think humans live their exterior life? Like, how do they see the exterior life? And why is just living an exterior life, why is it dangerous in the long run? Okay, the ayah about Muslims rejoicing, will they be happy because Romans will win, or because this was a kind of good omen foretelling their victory? That's a good point, yeah? I didn't think of that. Good omen for foretelling the victory of the polytheists. Yeah, maybe that's a good point there. Definitely something to think about. And like obviously Muslims, they kind of like they do a lot of i'tibar, ibra. They take a lot of sort of like what do you call it, indirect sort of analogies they take. So indirect analogies is something that we should apply in our lives as well. So going back to this Zahir al-Hayat dunya, like I said, let's call this now, let's coin it with the term the European way of living. The European way of living, I mean, in my mind, it's a very Zahir, right? You kind of focus on your senses, you focus on observation, you focus on science, you focus on man-made sort of like rules, man-made laws, man-made concepts, theories, and then you focus, you actually you build your whole society upon this. And the problem that I see with the Zahir, if you live your life according to a Zahir min hayat dunya, it means it's going to be like, let's say there's a person who lives inside of a building, a large, massive, let's say, 50-story building, and they live right in the middle, right? And they've never left their apartment, and they don't have any windows on their apartment, so they don't know what's outside, and they've never been out, right? And let's say, for example, they've tried to work out how the world works and how the world exists. So what do? They kind of like, whenever something happens, they try to work out why is this happening for. So let's say they hear a siren outside on the streets. They don't know it's the streets, but they hear a siren. They're going to be thinking, what's this siren noise? Is it a creature? Is it a creature that makes this sound randomly for no reason? They're just going to think of it as a random sound that's been made. If they hear some, let's say, for example, some birds chirping, they're going to be thinking that this is another creature. If they, for example, hear someone screaming outside, they're going to be thinking, what's this sound? Is it a good sound? Is it a bad sound? So this idea of, they're trying to work out what this is. They feel, let's say someone's doing drilling downstairs, like a jackhammer, and some workers are doing drilling, and they think, what's happening? The whole building, the room's shaking. So you see what happens? They create their own reality, and that own reality can easily burst one day, and they don't know how to respond. But as Muslims, when we're given the inner reality, in the Muslim would يَعْلَمُ بَاطِنًا مِنْ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. They'd understand the interior, and when they understand the interior, what happens is they create inside themselves this kind of safety, security, because they know the reality. They know the reality is, like, for example, we know the reality is we're going to die one day. We all know that. And we know the reality is that our bodies are not going to survive. And we know the reality is that we're going to have to go to Allah. And we know the reality is we're going to be questioned. And we know the reality is that, we might lose our jobs, and we might lose our health, and we might lose our family members. And these are the realities that Allah tells us about. When you know these realities, then it means you're more in control of your own affairs. You feel more comfortable, you feel more what's the word? You feel more confident about living your life. Okay, they don't reflect on the purpose of each aspect of their lives, so their lives lack meaning. Excellent, that's a good point. Yeah, no meaningfulness in their life, no fulfillment. I mean, when we say meaningfulness, as in there's no ultimate meaningfulness, because they can have a subjective meaningfulness. They can create their own meaning in life, but it's a very subjective meaning, right? And that can always easily be tested when times get tough. So when times get tough, they can easily be tested in these kind of things. In Surah, European meaning Western. Maybe it could mean it's not necessarily referring to Western. It's referring to a worldly life without God, without the true understanding of God. So if you were to remove God from the picture, you remove Allah from the picture, and you create a society now. Any society is the society which only recognizes ظاهرا من الحياة الدنيا, and the one that we most of us are familiar with is, you can say, Western. Yeah, وهم عن الآخرة هم غافلون. And when it comes to the akhirah, they are ghafil, totally unaware, heedless. Yeah, they're totally heedless. They have no idea this is coming. It's like someone, let's say, walking in the middle of a busy road without even turning their face, not even realizing that there's a big truck coming towards them. Right? Total ghafil. Or like the guy who's going over the driving over the train tracks, and he's trying to cross over. He doesn't even realize that a train is coming. Or a person that's swimming in the middle of the sea, and they're swimming and they don't even realize that from underneath them there's a big shark that's coming here to grab them. This is the dangers. This is like, these guys are ghafil an hayat dunya. Again, this idea of ghulibat Ar-Rum, Rum becoming, devoured, dominated, repetition of this idea is seen throughout. Now Muslims can become dominated as well. That's not a problem. Muslims may become dominated, but because Muslims have this belief in the hereafter and they know this idea of, like some of you guys mentioned, the meaningfulness, you see this inside of it. Okay, Wasiq, by not mentioning the enemies of Furs is a praise for the latter generation of the Persians being carriers of the deen. Example, okay, maybe yes, but then at the same time someone can say that maybe the Rum as well, the Rum, these were also people that became Muslim then. Many of them became Muslim in the time of the Khulafa and even after them. So I would that argument doesn't seem very like a strong one. I mean, to me, I don't know. I love how Allah Ta'ala repeats the defeat of Romans twice. The first ayah would have sufficed, but the Allah Ta'ala mentions it again, second, to make their victory sound even more miraculous. Yeah, maybe, could be, definitely could be something there. That sounds plausible. Their way of living could lead to hedonism, nihilism. Okay, is that nihilism? Is it nihilism? So yes, definitely. So this idea of just working for your nafs, or that everything is going to be destroyed anyway, this kind of like path that many of the Western societies are taking now. So any sort of irreligious society that you have, or non-religious society, they do take this path that the life is, based upon your own desires, do what you want, and live how you like. Everything's going to be destroyed, everything's going towards, and this is a very dangerous way of living, obviously, because it's just like a kind of like a suicide, you can say. It's like a suicide mentality, in the sense that a person is just killing themselves. أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا مَا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. So now here is where, like, Allah is now inviting them to ponder now. So this is like the introduction has been laid out, problem has been laid out to mankind, right? Just like when someone's given a presentation and the first introductory words, you kind of lay out to them what the problem is. Right now, next step, which is now let's discuss, think about this now. أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا. Don't these people do fikr? Fikr meaning, don't they kind of utilize their thinking, their ability to be able to ponder. فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. In themselves. فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. In other words, يَتَفَكَّرُوا, regarding themselves. So humans think about the world, as in, remember, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. They clearly think about the cosmos, they think about the earth, they think about humans in the sense of humans, as in the biological sort of like creation, and they think about their psychology, all these things. They do think about this. But أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Don't they think يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, inside themselves, like as in this fikr should be done in a way that is not something that's done like in a classroom when we do like group thinking. Like if I throw a question at you, go, let's discuss this idea, let's discuss coronavirus, let's discuss poverty, let's discuss oppression in the world. This is obviously a tafakkur, yes, without doubt. But يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, in themselves, like really ponder about true realities of life. مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. This is where the true thinking should take place. In other words, true thinking, yes, we need academic thinking, but academic thinking will always go away from, will always like deter the thought from asking about the true questions. What are the true questions? Why are we here? The why question. Why are we here? Why are we here? Why are we here? So the science generally talks about how. So science kind of asks the question, how did this come to existence? How did this person become a psychopath? How does this person, end up, like this? How? But now we need to تفكر في أنفسهم ما خلق الله السماوات والأرض. Allah did not create the skies and the earth and everything in between إلا بالحق, except with an ultimate truth, ultimate reality, haqq, something which is not batil. So in other words, this entire universe, imagine this entire universe is structured around something that is an absolute reality. What is that absolute reality? And then now we're asking the question, if there is an absolute reality around this question, what is the opposite of that? What's not real? Yeah. So in other words, it seems as though what these people are doing, they're focusing on the zahir of the hayat dunya, which is the non-reality, the temporal realm, and there's a reality which they're all ignoring. And this is what Islam seems to remind people of, the batin min al-hayat dunya, you can say, wa ajalin musamma, and the fixed time. So there seems to be a fixed time when things are going to start happening, right? Everything has a fixed point. Wa inna kathiran min an-nas, and many people, inna kathiran, Allah says many, not everyone. So kathir could be like, most of them, could be a few of them, but lots of them. Kathiran min an-nas bi liqa'i rabbihim lakafirun. Many people, when it comes to meeting their Lord, are totally disbelieving. Kafirun. So here, I don't want to go into balagha of these kind of things, but the point is that the tafakkur should lead you to Allah. Why is this being created for? Why has this been created for? Should bring you back down to, should naturally bring you to who brought this into existence. Who brought this into existence should bring you to Allah. When you believe in Allah, then you're going to believe in a concept of accountability. In other words, if you do not believe in the idea of why, you never get to accountability. Accountability is the ultimate sort of, you can say, the core of human society. Human society, Rome and these societies didn't seem to have this idea of accountability like the Islam has. And this is why now, if you look in the European society, they may be very advanced in technology and their sciences, but because they don't have accountability, then everything else is just something that is dangerous. It can lead to other dangerous sort of ideas that these people are coming out with. Alaikum salam, Sufyan. Communism comes to mind. Communism, definitely, yes. So all these kind of ideas that people come out with that are dangerous, ways, fascism, communism, or even capitalism, all of these things can have very detrimental effects if they are not, if they are conflicting with the rules of Islam. History showed that Islamic conquest of the Middle East, like the Levant, Syria, Iran, Turkey, wasn't a miracle, but the weakened neighbor countries like Persia and Rome, because of never-ending wars between the 700 years. I don't know why some people think it's a miracle. Of course, the Nabi Sallallahu did prophesies the conquest. So, okay. I mean, I kind of get what you're saying. What does creation with bil-haq mean? So, creation bil-haq, and Allah creating things bil-haq. Haq means something that is solid, permanent, there forever. That's haq. Haq can never disappear. Haq is something which is like a permanent fixture. So imagine a big building. The foundations of the building are haq, and everything else in the building is batil. Right? So the walls are batil, the ceilings batil, the decorations are batil. They can all fade away, dust away, but the foundations will always remain. So imagine this is the reality of existence. There is a haq, and that haq is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the haq. And those things that Allah has created are haq. For example, like Jannah, Jahannam, these are the haq. Yeah, Quran is haq. The messengers are haq. Islam is haq. These are like truths, absolute truths. These are, and then everything else in between are just like temporary forms of existence. Temporary existences, like some of them are even fake existences. Like we create around ourselves, fake realities we create. So the fake realities would be the batil, and then everything opposite to that would be the haq system. So it's like the surah now. So we'll actually stop up today, so we can reflect now from the beginning, right? So you guys can think about here, think about things in this surah. So ghulibat Ar-Rum. So this idea of Rum being dominated, right? That is something which is obviously something very powerful. Like if we hear that America is dominated or China is dominated, thinking about this idea. I mean, nowadays, obviously, with the COVID, we realize how weak their system was. But it just makes you think that this is something that's obviously going to have a big impact on human society. Yeah, because China becoming paralyzed, America becoming paralyzed, has had a big impact on the rest of the entire world. And we always have to remember that this sort of like dominance and this shift of power is always going to change. It's never always going to be in the hands of one society for a very long time, even Muslims. And the idea that Muslims at the end of the day, they know that Allah is always in control. This is the main thing, right? So the Muslims know that Allah is in control, and Allah can give power to whoever He wants, because Allah Himself is the one who gave power and He can take it. And that the promises of Allah are something that Muslims should be firm on, should be certain with. Yeah. So in other words, these people, the difference between, like you can say, the difference between Rum, the difference between Muslims is that the Rum don't have the belief in the promises of Allah, and they live their life in a way of total oblivion to the realities of the Akhirah. And Muslims are the opposite. And Rum functions, or it operates on the basis of just the outer sensory observations. Sensory observations, that's how they work. And then they even make their philosophies based upon this. And when it comes to the hereafter, which is the haqq, they are totally oblivious to it. Ghafil. And the reality is that we have to, if you want to have a healthy society, the healthy society must have this inner sort of consciousness of what? Inner consciousness of why have we been put here? The khalqul samawat, the khalqul ard, the khalq of everything in between. We should think about these things. Muslims are encouraged to study. Muslims are encouraged to learn about the cosmos, learn about dunya, the world, the moon, the sun, paleontology, zoology, biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics. All these things, learn them, because this is all part of samawat and ard. But this should not deter you away from what is the point of doing all this, and that we're not going to be here forever. There's always an ajalin musamman, and most people are disbelievers in meeting Allah. So most people are disbelievers in meeting Allah can actually mean like two levels of the disbelieving. One level is like the ultimate level where your religion does not have this article of faith that you are going to be accountable. And the other one is your religion does have this, but you don't believe it, as in you live your life in a way as though you don't believe there's a hereafter. As in you commit offences, you show acts of disobedience to Almighty Allah. All of these things are things that indicate that you might think that you believe in hereafter, but the way you're living your life, you don't. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's have a look at what you guys saying. Ignore my comments. I just love history. I was just commenting on how Rome fall at the rise of Islam because of cruelty to human. Yeah, definitely. The reality is, when it comes to these historic sort of events, the Quran mentions trends in society. There's these trends and these cycles that human life goes through, and those cycles are something which are embedded in the teachings of the Quran. So you can actually think about the Quran, think about what happened to these past nations, and you can see those effects in society. Like, for example, this is just like something which has just happened now, which is people had so much certainty in capitalism and the interest-based markets that they thought to themselves that Muslims must be wrong when it comes to interest. As in, interest has to be okay, and the interest-based system should be fine. Look at how powerful the West has become, and look how amazing societies they've developed based upon interest-based systems. But this kind of thing just shows how the interest-based system is just so catastrophic to human society. This is just like one example. Not to say that if you had a gold and silver system that the world wouldn't have been impacted. No, it would have been impacted, but not as much as the interest-based system, because the interest-based system is based upon greed. It's based upon this society becoming richer and richer and richer, and people are surviving for the fittest, fittest. And you can see that there may have been some of those elements in Rome as well. In Rome, in Persian, there may have been these different types of oppressive systems in place in each one of these that was ultimately causing the destruction of these societies. Because sometimes when an army fails, We don't know why it failed. Allah saying that Rome was dominated. Why did it dominate? Is it because Persia was more stronger? Did they have a stronger army? Was it because there was dissension in the army? Was it because the people's reliance wasn't there? Was it because they became too reliant on comforts of worldly life? Was it because they made wrong decisions? They chose the wrong people. So there could be so many things that can have an impact on the success and the defeat of a society. The Quran doesn't tell us what is it. Quran just says it's the nasr of Allah. It's the help of Allah. Right? So this is why we always remember that it's the help of Allah that will give the Muslims success in the reality in this dunya. Other things are just things that we think. Like we may think if everyone prays their salat on time and if everyone fasts, Allah will always give Muslims victory around the world and the globe will become a totally Muslim empire and we can put the flag of Islam around the whole globe. And that's not necessarily true. Right? We've never seen that in history. The Muslims have never become global dominant, right? And Muslims have always sometimes won and sometimes lost, and many times they've lost as well. They've gained lots of ground and they've lost lots of ground as well. Yeah, so it's like the Quran says, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامِ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Those are the events that we hand over, we switch over from side to side, team to team. Sometimes this team wins, sometimes that team wins. Yeah, so anything else? Anybody got any other comments on this before we finish? We have these truths, unfortunately struggle with committing to eternal values. Definitely internal values are very important. Yeah, internal values. That's where the morals come from. That's where morals and ethics, I think that those are very important points that we need to have in our society. As businessmen, do we run our business on the zahir min hayat dunya? As teachers, do we run our education system on the zahir min hayat dunya? Parents, do we bring our children up on the zahir min hayat dunya? So Rome was clearly doing that. Yeah, Rome was clearly operating their society upon the philosophy or the policy of zahir min hayat dunya. The zahir min hayat dunya is going to get you far. That's what they believed, and it's what happens today as well. The zahir min hayat dunya. But then, if we were to, like in our society, if we were to say, right, hijab is gonna give society success, or protection from fornication is going to give society success, or stopping gambling is going to give society success, or stopping the widespread use of alcohol is going to give society success. They wouldn't be able to see that because they can't see it working in a zahir min hayat dunya society. Yeah, so I think that's how we need to reflect. Reflections should be done, and these are just some of the things that I've thought about. What comes to your mind? So if you guys put in the comments what comes to your minds, inshallah, we can then maybe just wrap it up for today. Okay, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, jazakallah khair. Anything else? Anybody else got any sort of reflection that they've understood from this? Maybe something you never knew about this surah, maybe the first time you've ever come across something in the Quran, maybe there's just some wording that's used over here, right? There's like lots and lots of points that we can point out here. Some of them are related to obviously grammar and balagha and these kind of things. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, VMN. Okay, no one has got any reflection on that? Alright, so jazakumullah khair, guys. Thank you very much for participating. Hopefully, inshallah, I'm going to try to see what other day we can have this on. Maybe not tomorrow. Tomorrow might not be possible. Maybe on Thursday, inshallah. Yeah, so possibly Thursday. Hopefully, so stay tuned, inshallah. Roughly about the same time, we'll have another one, inshallah. And if there's no other questions related to this, right, or reflections related to these verses, then inshallah we're gonna finish there, inshallah. And you can always read up. You can, if you don't know Arabic, you can read a translation. I don't mind, and we can see some sort of like a way that you guys can also participate in this as well. Shaykh, what's the difference between shahid and shaheed? So shahid and shaheed generally mean the same thing, but shaheed seems to have more of a permanent meaning. because it comes in the pattern of fa'il. And fa'il is a word which has sifa mushabbaha. So it has a meaning of permanence. So someone being a shaheed is like someone who is longer. Shahid can simply be a person who witnessed something for one incident, one moment. Shaheed is someone who is continuously witnessing, like a continuous witness. The way you mention haqq, which always remains, is a powerful point. Jazakallah khair, jazakallah khair. No comment. Jazakallah khair, Munir. Yeah, so haqq is I believe it's mistranslated as truth, because the word in Arabic for truth is sidq. Sidq is the opposite of lying, truth and falsehood. Haqq actually means something more powerful, and this is if one of you maybe wants to go further, what you can do is go through the Quran. Wherever Allah mentions haqq, try to see the context of where He mentions it, and you can draw yourself a picture of what haqq is. Yeah, the idea of haqq is like truths, you can say, true realities, something which is permanent. And a good example is like the Quran gives in Surah Ra'd, where Allah mentions like أما الزبد فيذهب جفاء وأما ما ينفع الناس فيمكث في الأرض. Haqq will always be something that is like a heavy rock in the sea, in the river, that stays there, can't be pushed away. And all of the dirt and the dust and all the foam on the sea, in the river, will be pushed away when the floods come. But when the floods disappear, the only things that will be left will be the haqq, will be the stones, the sediments, heavy sediments. So the heavy sediments of life are the realities. Like death is a reality, it's always existed throughout life. It's a truth that has been continuous. Humans growing old is a reality, it's haqq. Yeah, humans, destroying themselves because of jealousy and because of oppression is a haqq. These are all haqqs, these are. Is witness for one time shahid? It could be a shahid, can possibly apply to one time. A shaheed, you can't say this person is a shaheed of one time. So shahid can be something that happens maybe even just once. Can happen many times as well. Someone can be a shahid for multiple times, like alim and alim. Alright, so jazakallah khair, guys. Take care, inshallah. Remember your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.